Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter, and we are rolling on into April. Spring break is sprung. We just got back from our spring break cruise. And Chris and Maddie and Seth just got back from Walt Disney World, and we're doing our Cabana show. And I'd like to welcome back to the show all the way down in Los Angeles. He's getting ready to watch the Oscars tonight. How you doing today, Chris?
So good. The Oscars are my Super Bowl.
This is Super Bowl. Who is winning tonight for Best Picture?
I think it'll be Coda.
Coda. Okay, then Best Actress.
So I hope that it's Jessica Chastain for Eyes of Tammy Faye, but we'll see.
And then how about Best Actor?
Probably Will Smith for King Richard.
Oh, there we go. I haven't seen that yet. I heard that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I watch it and it's about sports.
It's about sports. And joining us as well, all the way down in Florida. Are you ready to join us? You're talking offline. How you doing today, Christy?
I am well, and now my family's talking and doors are open and things are crazy over here. I'm well. I don't know one thing that is occurring in the Oscars today, except that pretty people will dress up in pretty clothing.
Well, Walt Disney was an Oscar winner, and we're talking about Disney Cruise Line, but they haven't won an Oscar for a while. When was the last time Disney won an Oscar? I'm guessing it's probably like not special effects, but some kind of like song.
Scores and stuff, I feel like. Yeah. And like there was a animated picture in there a couple of times, and I feel like some stuff like that happened.
Yeah, what do you mean a couple of times? They win the Best Picture for Animated Movie almost every year, but that's partially because Pixar is the reason that they win Oscars.
So who wins it this year? I should have asked that. That's my last question, I guess.
I think that Lin-Manuel Miranda is going to win for Encanto.
Enchante?
What?
Enchante?
Yeah, Enchante. No, for Encanto. Because we don't talk about Bruno. But actually, Dos Orejitas is the song that they put forward for Best Song. And everyone thinks it's going to win, which means that Lin-Manuel Miranda will have won an EGOT this year. An Emmy, a Tony, an Oscar, and a Grammy.
So it's kind of like the Triple Crown of horse racing, huh?
Except there's 4 awards there, Steve.
And it's not horse racing.
No,
actual talent is needed.
It is art.
Sorry if you're a horse racer out there.
Well, the good thing about this is when this episode comes out, this is going to come out way after the Oscars have already.
We will know. We will know what happened. You will hear what our thoughts were live and unfiltered.
All right. Well, let's jump into this month's kind of Cabana type episode. We got a couple different topics. One of them, Christy really wanted to touch on was Disney Cruise Line current policies with COVID. So we're kind of going to go over that. They could possibly change between the minute we're talking about this and 2 seconds after we get done talking about it, the way things have been going. But before we jump into that, we are going to talk about the fact that the unofficial guide to Disney Cruise Line is back, the 2022 version. It went on hiatus in 2021. It's back now. You can order it through your favorite bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever good books are sold. It's written by Aaron Foster, Len Testa, and Richie Helfand. I'm not sure. Have we ever talked to Richie Helfand? We've never talked to Richie, have we?
We have not.
Maybe we need to get him on. And just kind of as an overview, if you do not have it or have not used it before, it's a great guide. It offers you planning, money-saving tips, current views of all the ships, including staterooms, dining, kids' clubs, entertainment, nightlife. And there's a new section in it as well, covering river and expedition cruises, which are fairly new. Right, Christy?
Yeah, that section has been in there before, but it's new in terms of like the first edition didn't have it, but it has been in there in the last couple of, or at least the last few.
Okay, maybe I missed that, but they do include the expedition cruising now, which is new, I guess.
That would be new, yes.
Okay, so they've got a section on that. It also has a short chapter with a first look at the Disney Wish, which is getting ready to set sail July, right, of 2022. And there's also a URL that they mentioned several times throughout the book, which you can go to, and they will give you updates as the year goes on. So if things change, you'll be able to go to that link and see what they've updated within the book itself. So Great copy. I always get a copy of it and take a look at it. If you want to, you can always go to used bookstores and usually find it as well. If you want to find an older copy, it has a lot of the same information, or you can get a lot of the general information overall, but obviously the latest updated stuff is in 2022. So
if anybody wants a 2020 version of that book, maybe the 2021 would be one to keep, because we didn't make it very far into 2020 while things were still happening. But if anybody wants a 2020 copy and is going to Walt Disney World, I am happy to deliver you a 2020 copy at no cost to you to your Walt Disney World resort during your trip, if I am in the area.
And I'm excited to announce that Erin Foster will be joining us in an episode. If that episode has not already come out, we are going to be talking to her just a couple of days after we're recording this episode. So it'll be fun to catch up with her, kind of hear about her thoughts with the book, but also all the things that she's been doing. She's usually been to Adventures by Disney, definitely going down to the parks. And I'm sure she's been to several cruises as well. Always a fun conversation with her.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's turn into the main topic tonight, which is Disney Cruise Line current policies. Do you want to kick it off, Christy, or should I?
As I've just choked over my own self, I think you should kick it off.
Okay, we are just going to touch on some of the basic policies of Disney Cruise Line as they're put on the website right now. And the way you find it is goes to disneycruiseline.com. Go to Know Before You Go. What is it? Know Before You Go? What can I say?
Yeah, it's Know Before You Go.
Know Before You Go. And they break it down into several different sections in which they describe what you need to do based on how old you are and your vaccination status as well. But overall, go ahead, Christy.
But not just what's in the Know Before You Go section, what the current practice is on Disney Cruise Line for the various restrictions, which I think is important because the Know Before You Go section is not always clear. It'll be clear if they have a specific rule that is something like you have to get tested before the cruise at such and such time. But when you're on the ship and you want to go to the pool, I would like to know, and I wanted to know even before my last cruise, mid-March, like what was happening at the pool. And so that's what we're going to talk about as of March 27th. What has been happening? I should say, actually, you got off the ship on the 25th. So what has been happening on the ships up to that point? Because that is what we're currently aware of.
So all guests are required to be vaccinated who are eligible to be vaccinated based on U.S. eligibility ratings and the CDC against COVID-19. Those who are not eligible to be vaccinated, so that I think under 5, need to test anywhere from 3 days to 24 hours prior to arrival. They have to have a negative COVID test, and rapid antigen tests are not accepted. They give a lot of different options on the website. You can go to it. You can partner with Safe Passage, which is the website that you're going to go to upload all this information. They offer testing possibilities with them as well. Of course, you can always do it in your own hometown before you leave. And there's a lot of options in the Florida area as well if you're sailing at a Port Canaveral in Orlando. Christy?
Yeah. If you can get into Walgreens, and I think it was listener Brian who originally even told us about this, but I would recommend the Walgreens ID Now NAT, like NAT test. So they put it in their system as ID Now. It is quick. They get you the results in a couple of hours typically, and it qualifies for a Disney Cruise Line test.
So basically, if you're eligible to be vaccinated, you have to be vaccinated to board the ship and everybody has to test negative at the port. Chris, why don't you talk about the negative testing at the port and how that process works?
Basically, you're required to test negative at the port before you board. And if you're on sailings that are longer than 5 nights, you're required to take a COVID antigen test the day before you debark. So that's been how it's been for the last little bit, but basically they're continuing that. This is also, I think, Steve, since you've been on a cruise ship so recently, you can speak to this, but this is also continuing these policies while also increasing capacity on the ship. Like we have reports that they've recently put more tables in the dining rooms and that they are filling up the ships to a larger capacity than they have so far since cruising restarted. So they still have these requirements, but they're also letting a lot more people onto the ship.
There is one other testing option or non-testing option, though, at the port. And that's if you've had a 90-day, if you've tested positive for COVID by a official location, so not in your house, then within the last 90 days, you could do a 90-day recovery letter And so you have to have the official test showing within 90 days. It's like over 11 days and within 90 days showing that you've had COVID. You need a note from your doctor saying you're recovered. And then you don't have to test at the port. Actually, on my last cruise in mid-March, about half of our car, literally one half all the way down, did not have to test because they had a 90-day recovery. And then the other half of the car had to test.
So if you have to test, the way the process works is you're going to show up to the port at your port arrival time. Do not show up early because they will not have space for you. So they're pretty stringent about that. Once they call you into the testing facility, wherever that is, it differs from Port Canaveral to San Diego to New Orleans, but it's kind of a similar process where they're going to take you and your traveling party together in a group, and you're all going to do the swab test. You all have to do that yourselves. And then they're going to collect those samples, and you're going to go to a waiting room where you get to wait and refresh the safe passage. Or they have screens, and the screens show instead of showing your name or showing your stateroom, it shows what am I looking for? The
confirmation number.
Your confirmation number. And it's kind of confusing because there's like hundreds of confirmation numbers up there. It's like, oh, and the confirmation number is like 7 numbers long or something like that. So
yeah.
I recommend the Safe Passage. Just keep refreshing that. And you will also get an email through Safe Passage as well. So those are kind of your options. Once you get those negative tests, you are cleared to board, and then you get to go through the boarding process. I want to go back to one thing you said, Chris. You said 5 nights or longer. That is only for unvaccinated guests that have to do that the day prior to disembarking. It's paid for by Disney, and it's done in your room. Christy, can you talk about that? I think Blake did that.
Yeah, he did that in December. So they gave us a note the day before saying they'd be in our cabin. I want to say as early as like 7 a.m. And that particular day we were awake. So they could come between 7 and maybe 8 or 9. It was really early, whatever it was. They knock on your door, they open it, they take your child who's standing there. Assume if they're tall enough to stand, they swabbed their nose. And I'm pretty sure they did it, but maybe we did it. And then they come back, you leave it. You're supposed to leave it on your little desk. You have to stay in your room while that test is being conducted. And then they come back and get it 15 minutes later. Very easy, very kind.
Other than Amber that was woken up, I think at 7 o'clock in the morning, her daughter was still asleep.
Well, yeah. So that is the problem. They do come really early. So that would be a problem, but.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know how else they could do it, though, with the number of kids or people sailing. But it's also worth noting that if you're going to sail back to back, you have to have a retest done. So you have to get off the ship, go get another test, which I guess, could still be stressful. I think one thing that people keep talking about with these procedures is just that it's a little stressful to fly. Some people are flying to Port Canaveral. It's a little stressful to fly all the way across the country and not know if you're going to actually get to go on your vacation until you get to the port. That being said, it would also be really difficult if you were just on a ship and you happen to have gotten COVID between the two sailings and you were planning to do a back-to-back and then you tested positive in the port. So I think we can all agree that this isn't ideal from a stress standpoint, but it is a reasonable safety measure. This is what all the cruise lines in some way, shape, or form are doing to policies like this. And we all know that Disney is going to probably be slightly more protective because they're more likely to have passengers who can't be vaccinated, right? Those under 2 kids are more likely to sail on Disney. Under 5 kids are more likely to be able to sail on Disney than any other cruise line. So it makes sense that they're being extra protective.
All good points there. Chris in California in one of our New Orleans episode talked about it and kind of how stressful it was. Or excuse me, not the New Orleans episode. It was the episode. It was their back-to-back sailing that they did before the New Orleans cruise that we were on with him. And he talked about kind of how stressful it was and thinking about who's going to pack up our room.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while you guys were talking just now. Could you imagine?
Oh my gosh, all that stuff. Yeah, we just sailed out of San Diego and we just had a 2-hour drive to get there, right? Whenever we did that, was that October or November? But that was slightly less stressful because we were like, well, if we get denied, we'll drive home. It was just sort of it is what it is. And so for Florida residents, maybe less stressful. But if you're flying into Florida to go on a cruise, that's got to be a stressful time to wait to get your test.
It's possible I wasn't listening for a second. So just cut this out and cut this out anyway. But There is the idea that I know some people have talked about taking one of those at-home tests before they go to get on the plane. So that is a good idea. If one of those tests were to test positive, you don't have to show Disney more to cancel your cruise. You call up, you say, yes, we had a COVID positive test in the house. They'll accept that to help you cancel your cruise. So maybe that's not a bad idea if people were traveling before their trip.
I mean, who knows how long this will last, but Disney has been pretty reasonable about people canceling vacations for COVID. Mm-hmm. I can share that I canceled my January Run Disney trip. Run Disney notoriously never gives refunds, and they refunded us on a Disney gift card. So it wasn't like they gave us cold hard cash back, but they refunded our Run Disney races. They let us move our hotel booking to our spring break. So, I think Disney in general is being understanding about people who cancel their vacation for COVID reasons, but we obviously have no idea how much longer that's going to last.
So March 14th hit us, and did the world end, Christy? What happened March 14th? Do you remember? I think I got the date right.
It was March 10th. The day masks went away inside the cruise ship.
March 10th.
It was
March
something
10th.
Like March 10th. It was before March 14th for sure.
Okay. All right. March 10th happened. What happened?
I cruised on March 14th. So maybe that's why
there's my 14th. I knew I had a 14 in there somewhere. Okay.
So Disney Cruise Line previously had a policy that all guests 2 and older had to wear masks inside on Disney Cruise Line ships. And on whatever date in March 10th or 11th, they removed that policy in part.
So you can't just show up to the port and just not have your mask on, right?
No, well, that's a federal law until the middle of April, at least, that you have to have a mask on in a port, in a transportation center. It's federal law. So you're still wearing your masks in the port, exiting and entering, embarking and debarking the ship. And then there's a couple of places on the cruise ship, or maybe, and even in the process, that you would have to wear masks. So those places are in the Walt Disney World Theater, which is where the shows are held. The theater shows. The Buena Vista Theater seems to be an item of a maybe, because on the Wonder, there's been reports, Steve just had one, that he didn't have to wear a mask. On the Dream, you absolutely had to wear a mask at the Buena Vista Theater. And that would make sense because there's seats and people. So who knows, as this phrase goes, your response may vary, or your, outcome may vary. So maybe a mask there. And that's where movies are played. The under 5, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, have to wear a mask inside the kids club. And then some countries may require masks amongst their countries. So technically in the Bahamas, still Castaway Cay, you do have to wear a mask anytime you're inside. So if you're shopping, which that one seemed to be enforced in the bathrooms, that was not enforced so much, but the signs and the requirement was still there. And then there could be other times that you need a mask. So you're still right now going to bring your mask on Disney Cruise Line. Steve thinks about 10 to 15% of the passengers on his cruise were wearing a mask. When I was cruising in March, there was not that many people probably wearing a mask. Maybe people with children, more of those families, younger children, not all of them, but more of them were wearing a mask than not. So people are just sort of choosing to wear a mask outside of the one places it's a requirement, whether they chose to or not. And then the crew members, unless they have an outside job, and even in there, I'm not entirely sure when they have to wear a mask and don't, but the crew members not outside are wearing masks still.
If they're behind the bar, behind some type of bar or restaurant facility outside, they have to wear a mask. The ones that I saw taking their masks off sometimes, and it was very few of them, but the people working out in the pool areas and walking around kind of that outside area. And one of our servers, sometimes he would wear a mask, sometimes he wouldn't, but generally he kept his mask on the whole time as well. One of our servers, outside at the pool area, like at the signals, not at the restaurant. And the only other time you'll see, if you happen to know what a crew member's badge looks like, it's a little bit different than the guests. You'll see them out on deck 4. They won't wear masks when they're not working, but when they're at work, they will always be wearing their masks if they're inside. Before we touch on the kids clubs one more time, because they kind of break the kids apart, and I think you've got an idea on that, Christy, just to kind of re-summarize. So when you go through the port, when you go through the testing facility, as you go through the check-in process, and until you get onto the ship, right now, at least, you have to wear your mask. Once you're on the ship, you can take your mask off if you don't want to, other than the Buena Vista Theater, possibly, depending upon the ship. Definitely the Walt Disney Theater. The one thing that we did see, we went to the adults. We had a comedy magician on board, and we went to his like adult show, and he wore his mask if he got close to anybody. So he brought people up on stage to do things. And when he did that, he asked them to wear their mask. And if they didn't have a mask, he gave them one, and he would wear a mask too. So I don't know if that's like a contract thing with the performers. Chris, you might understand that a little bit better at one time being a cast member, if there's like some different things like that they could put in kind of your contract.
Basically, Disney performers are oftentimes with a union called AGVA. AGVA contracts have different policies than normal Disney cast members. It's the reason why performers, even before the pandemic era, Walt Disney World maskless time, were still able to not wear masks, is because they're in a different union and they have different rules. But by the same token, to protect those actors, if they are interacting with people from the audience, they are allowed to request masks and things like that. So it's not super surprising there. Also, if you'll remember, in spaces where people are singing, there's a lot more COVID in the air. And so it makes sense that there are probably more stringent rules around the Walt Disney Theater still needing to wear masks, because there's a lot of performers in that space. So that's what's happening now. I also think, we've texted about this. It seems like they're just slowly refining these rules and policies so that the Wish can sail as if COVID doesn't exist, right? Like their goal is to
but
get
it's not
back.
Just the Wish. It is every
it's all their ships, but
it's every industry, everything is working in that way.
Yes, agreed. I'm just saying, like, I don't think anyone at Disney can imagine a world where they launch this new ship without all of the amenities and things that they have promised people. Like, do you remember when they first announced that slide into the kids club and we were all like, how can we go down that slide? It'll be covered in COVID. I think Disney's like, that slide is safe. So, so I'm just sort of like, okay, we're going there. I also, I just got back from Disney World. We're going to do a trip report episode, but I can say that we may have been the only people wearing masks in the entirety of Disney World. And
then when I joined you, again, also just us.
Yeah. So I think like the parks are moving in that direction, and folks who are more comfortable wearing masks should absolutely be allowed to do that. But we also just have to acknowledge that times are changing. Things are different. COVID numbers were down when we were traveling, which was nice, but it's something to think about. And you all, and we've said this before, we'll say it again. We sound like parrots here. You should make decisions based on your personal comfortability, your family's needs, all of that, because Disney at the end of the day is really just following like CDC guidelines, period. Like that's basically what they do.
Yeah, your comfort level minus the requirements. So follow the requirements. And if you'd like to do more than that, do that yourself as well.
Yep. And the good thing is I have not seen any shaming whatsoever on board the ships as far as people wearing masks. So if you want to wear masks, do not feel like you're a little bit different, even if you're part of the 10% versus the 90 or 80% who are not wearing it. So the last thing I want to touch on is just the port adventures like you talked about. So when out of Mexico and then I guess Nassau, when you get off the ship, when you're actually disembarking the ship and embarking, coming back on through security, they had us wear our masks in Mexico. Technically in Mexico and outdoor areas, well, actually, I'm not even going to say that. Technically, you're supposed to wear your mask in Mexico. But as far as people that just got off and they were wandering around the town, nobody had their masks on. And we had to wear our masks on the buses to the places that we were going to. But once we got to the excursion area, it was up to us whether we wanted to. We did a zipline adventure, and all of the guides, for the most part, wore masks the whole time while they were doing the adventure. So just that's another place where you may be required to wear a mask.
Nassau would have the same requirement, where in theory, the requirement is you are to wear it outside. But in practice, really, it was when people were going inside a building that occurred.
So I want to touch on one more thing just real quick, and that's the kids clubs, because and I think you understand this or have a good handle on this, Christy, as far as the kids that are unvaccinated, they're actually separating them right now in the kids club area still.
Yeah. So we are going to put a link to my updated current state of the blog, kids club blog that will be in the show notes so you can read along with it. But let's talk about the kids club as a whole. The kids club for those kids that are 5 and older, and fully vaccinated, because there could be 5 and up to 6 weeks that are not fully vaccinated, but 5 and older, fully vaccinated, have a restriction to the number of kids that are allowed in the clubs. But for those age groups, no other real restriction exists. My son may have been one of maybe 5 of the kids club times when he was there wearing a mask in the kids club. So masks are not required in the clubs. There is a limit on the Fantasy and the Dream of 200 children in the ages 5 to 12 kids club. Well, it's really 5 to 12 right now. So the club and the lab, and they did not hit that capacity of 200 kids for the 2 cruises that I am familiar with. I don't believe they hit it, at least on the Dream, for the 2 cruises after, but just something to keep in mind. They're not generally hitting that kids club. And the process is the same as it used to be, where you just drop off your kid anytime, you pick up your kid anytime. The only difference, the major difference of the kids club is they're counting kids, A, but B, they're not feeding your children. So you do have to grab your kids for meals now. And then at Castaway Cay, there is no, I don't know if there's a limit, but again, you could drop your kid off, pick them up when you want, and there is no feeding them. So you have to feed them yourself. The biggest difference is for the ages 3 to 5 and 6 weeks, the unvaccinated. Those kids are being separated. I believe there's only 15 to 20 allowed at a time in the club. And they, at least on the Dream and the Fantasy, are in Andy's room exclusively, which also means Andy's room is closed to the rest of the kids. And Andy's room is the little playroom where there's the slide. And, the Magic and the Wonder have a room with the slide. At least the Wonder does. I can visualize it and I'm assuming that at least on that ship, that's the room that they're putting the kids in, because, there's something for them to do and space and all of that. So that room is only open for all of children during the times that the littles aren't allowed in there, which is after 10 o'clock. So it seems that there is a bedtime on the 3 to 5-year-olds that the kids club closes to them. It's either 10 or 10:30. I think it was that you have to pick up your kid by 10. So by 10:30, they can open up that space to all of the kids. But that would be it, because of the rest of the time when there is babysitting, essentially, right? Programming in the kids club, they have the littles in that Andy's room. The other major problem is if you have kids that you're traveling with that are in the unvaccinated age, they're not in the nursery, so they're in the 3 to 5 range, and you have older kids, those kids will be separated. And we don't know how long this is going to last. It is what it is right now. And people just have to be aware that is the current policy. Even in my own group, we were with a 4.5-year-old that could not go to the kids club now with my son. And that was the intention, that those kids would go in together, and they couldn't. And even at Castaway Cay, they had to be separated. So at Castaway Cay, which is outside, you're just playing in the dirt, basically, at their kids club, you play in the sand. The littles were separated from the bigs. Just know that going in. And I'm sorry for all of those that this affects, because it affects people. And the littles aren't going to go in without their big brothers or without their friends or whatever it is. So
definitely. So just to reiterate, if you're unvaccinated, they have to wear masks in the kids clubs, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. And
that's for every age, I think, at Bibbidi Bobbidi.
Okay. And
I could be wrong. But.
Okay. And so your results may vary at Bibbidi Bobbidi. And they're encouraged to wear their masks. The unvaccinated kids are encouraged to wear their masks in indoor spaces. So you don't have to. So just, once again, it is what it is right now. Chris, is the Small World Nursery open yet?
No, you cannot get the Small World Nursery reservations currently. But like I said, I think they could bring things like that back before the summer for the Wish, because they're trying to get cruising back to normal. And then this should definitely be said. If you have COVID symptoms while you're on board, report it. That's the responsible thing to do, everybody. I know it's scary and stressful to think that your vacation may change while you're on vacation, but for the safety of everybody, it's a good idea to self-report symptoms when you have them. And that way the ship can test you, see what's going on. And they might be like, nope, it's just a normal 2019 cold.
Yeah, Brian of the DCL duo talked about being sick on board and how they really did test him on one of his cruises over the winter. And they realized, yep, you don't have COVID. So as soon as the test was here, you can go about and do your thing. To that end, I don't know. Did we ever talk about this on the air? I know we've talked about it not on the air, but with the whole, you have to change your room, your cabin, if you have COVID or suspected COVID to like deck 2. And part of that, I then heard somewhere else was related to a CDC requirement about the airflow situation where they couldn't have you open your cabin door and air rush out into the hallways because your COVID air, it's ridiculous, but your COVID air would be in the hallway. Well, there was a new CDC rule that said they don't care about because it's stupid probably, but the airflow situation, and they don't have to have the air that only goes in and out of one cabin, something, no negative air abilities, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm hoping that means that we don't have to change rooms if there's suspected COVID and you don't have to go on deck 2 anymore. So that's all. That's my commentary. I'm hoping that that's a new change, but there hasn't been positive cases right now that we're aware of. People aren't reporting and talking about their experience. We don't really know, but I'm hopeful that that is a new change.
Well, by now we'll know that Chris is absolutely right on all of his Oscar predictions, and all of these rules will probably have changed by the time this comes out. And we've just talked for 20 minutes, but we've got one more topic yet. And this is going to be a DCL podcast smackdown, maybe between the three of us. Well, this could be controversial. I don't even know. I'm trying to think of some kind of dance off thing or something like that. Maybe didn't they do that in the 50s where they'd have a dance off if there was two rivals against each other or something like that? It was in the movies, wasn't it, Chris? I don't know.
In the 50s, I cannot handle you putting a time period on dance offs. Dance offs are timeless, Steve. They happen in 2022.
Okay, so this is a dance off, but I was perusing online the other day, and I saw somebody make the comment that they were not going to cruise with Disney Cruise Line because Disney Cruise Line is a premium cruise line. They were not going to cruise again until that premium quality came back. Now, all three of us have been on cruises here since the startup started again. There's obviously some differences. Christy, Disney is a premium cruise line. What does that actually mean versus the mass market cruise lines? Can you talk about that?
So let's first say who are the mass market cruise lines? Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Norwegian. They are a mass market, and those would be the major United States.
Well, U.S. based. There are giant mass market cruise lines in Europe and Australia and other, but yes.
Yeah. Then premium is the next level up. And so those are going to be cruise lines with a little bit more plussed up experiences. Maybe their cabins are slightly bigger. In theory, the service is slightly better, although I think we would all argue that service on all of those lines are still really good. I mean, I don't know that you can maybe really notice the difference, but either way, service is great, right? They're going to try to do more for you, more inclusion. So less we're going to charge you for every single little tiny thing all the time. We're going to invent things to charge you for and then charge you for them. So they're going to try to include more into your cruise. Things are just a little nicer. The towels are just a little bit nicer. The fabric on your bed sheets are just a little bit nicer.
The beds themselves a little bit nicer.
Beds themselves are amazing. Just a little bit nicer. So those would be the major differences. Somebody put gourmet food. I was looking online once you told us about this, and I'm like, I don't know that it's gourmet food in most of these regular dining rooms of most of the premium cruise lines, if not all of them. It's good food. Gourmet is not the word I would use to describe.
You cannot make gourmet food for 3,000 people who are all eating at the same time. You can make pretty good food.
Yeah, exactly.
So can I go on a weird tangent?
No.
I'm going to go on a weird tangent just real quick. The pool guys, which we've become really good friends with on the Wanderer, one of their jobs is helping move luggage when you're getting on and getting off, and also helping with the room teardowns and build back ups each time. He told us that on the last cruise, they replaced 80 mattresses. They replaced the mattresses if there's any small little problem with it. And when we got off the ship, we saw the pallets of mattresses that were coming on the Wonder that they were going to replace for that next line. And he saw, and maybe I shouldn't put this out there, but he saw the invoice for it, over $100,000 for all those mattresses
for 80
to be replaced for 80 mattresses.
Well, that doesn't seem like the right math.
Yeah, that would make sense, Christy. $1,500 for a super nice mattress. That makes sense.
Does that work out? I don't know. Anyways, thought that was
$1,200.
But he replaces
that makes sense. $1,200 for a mattress.
Yeah, they replace they replace those mattresses like all the time, which I did not know. Anyways, okay.
Back that mattress, though, my friend, this was her first time cruising on Disney Cruise Line. She previously cruised on Royal and Carnival in the past, and she even said, honestly, those are the best mattresses. They're so good.
They are. Okay, Chris, we're going to start with you. Do you feel like your cruise back in October was a premium cruise based on what you experienced with Disney? And if it wasn't, what wasn't premium about it?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to plug my trip report to Walt Disney World because I have a lot of thoughts about Disney World versus Disney Cruise Line, and I'm not going to share them right now. So stay tuned, listeners. But I think that I have never had a bad experience, an overall bad experience on Disney Cruise Line. Now, I've also never had an overall bad experience on Norwegian, which is the only other cruise line I've sailed on. So, I think that it's a little bit nitpicky to refer to Disney as a premium cruise line and Norwegian and Royal as not. I think we can mostly all agree that Carnival is typically considered to be like the least fancy of the cruise lines, and the prices reflect that. I think that Disney is charging a premium and they're offering a moderate experience. I'm not saying that I think that it is a bad thing. I'm just saying that to me, premium is what I see people getting in concierge. The word premium. Right.
No, yeah, but that's luxury. That's a more luxury. So that is the difference. And, the other cruise lines charge for room service. Here's another example. Okay. Disney's not charging for you. There might be, if you want a box of M&Ms or something, you have to pay for that, but you can get room service without paying extra. The others only give you like a dry bagel in the morning without an additional fee. And so that's one of the things. The other cruise lines charge for steak, like a steak cut.
Okay. I'm going to cut in.
Yeah.
I'm going to rephrase the question because the question is not, is Disney Cruise Line a premium cruise line? It's that, is it a less of an experience now than what it was before?
It was kind of better without the people in the fall.
Yeah. I was going to say it is not. Anybody who's like, I'm not going to sail right now because it's a worse product than before, it confuses me a little bit to say that. Is it a more complicated product now? Yes, because we just spent 45 minutes talking about something that's going to be different by the time we release this episode. But is it a worse product? No. Our cruise to Mexico in November was an amazing cruise. We had a great time and, everything felt just as good. And some things, to Christy's point, were better because there weren't people on top of us. So, on that thing, I would say if you thought it was premium before, it is still premium. What I think that people are getting confused with, maybe, is that folks feel like Disney is in a nickel and diming era. And so their thought may be that Disney Cruise Line might be going the way of all these other cruise lines in that regard. And from what I've seen, that's not true. They're not nickel and diming you on things now that they weren't nickel and diming you on before. Not
on the cruise line.
Not on the cruise line. Oh, that's why I'm saying, listen to my trip report about Disney World because I have thoughts. But when we talk about the cruise line, it is probably the least nickel and diming part of the Disney empire because so much is included. You could go on a Disney cruise and spend $0 additional dollars and have an amazing vacation. Besides tips, but you could have literally one of the best vacations of your life and pay no additional dollars.
Right.
Okay, Chrissy, how about you? Do you feel at all that you're getting less of an experience now than what you had before? Or what is different, if there is anything different?
There's two differences that I could see a person maybe having that opinion over. and things that are different about cruising right now. But like Chris said, the lack of people is amazing. And, you know, I always like to have my space, but the two areas, pools with limits, explain to me. So one of our listeners told, and I were messaging back and forth, and they said, and we should have put this in the what's different about the cruise line, but she reminded me that there's only like 12 people allowed in the swimming pool on the Dream and the Fantasy right now, the two different pools, the Mickey and the whatever the other one's called. 12 people. And so they're like ringing a bell, and every 10 minutes you get out. That's not feeling very premium to me. Also, if you're putting people in the Buena Vista Theater to watch a movie sitting right next to somebody that doesn't have to wear a face mask, tell me why you're going to limit the number of people in a swimming pool. And they're putting those people next to each other. So this is what she pointed out. You have to sit on a railing to stand in line right next to the next person, like shoulder to shoulder, while they're then limiting the number of people swimming in the swimming pool. How is this different? Like, so whatever. That's stupid and not very premium, in my opinion. But that's just an issue of them trying to follow some sort of rule that they can't figure out how to deal with. The only other thing that is not up to a level that I would say is a DCL standard is the buffet with their 5 items that they're serving for like lunch and breakfast. The buffet, the breakfast is still, even for us in March, was not better. It was still like, you know, here's your literally 8 items that you can choose from to have for breakfast. And this is it, and enjoy, besides your fruit and a couple boxes of cereal. So I still think the buffet in the olden days, while it restarted, so it wasn't like, you know, an entire row of the food, you had a carving station. Where's my carving station? Did you have a carving station, Steve, when you were? No.
No carving station.
So bring back, the only thing I have to say, bring back my carving station about the buffet.
I mean, bring back my carving station and the 20 additional food options that I used to get that I don't get anymore.
And I sushi. Agree. I don't remember sushi being on this cruise, on my last cruise. I didn't maybe look as much in there, but was there sushi for lunch?
I have not been to Cabanas for lunch. I'll be completely honest. All the cruises that we've been on since they restarted back up.
Like any of the days, not even the first day, but not one day.
Well, I guess the first day, but they have the crab legs and shrimp, so they do have that the first day.
So they didn't get rid of crab legs. No carving station.
No carving station. Definitely the breakfast. I think the only other thing is I was kind of thinking about as you were talking that I could come to where we are port adventure people. If you're going to be limited on port adventures to at one point, it was only Disney port adventures that you could do. There was like in Mexico, there was a couple stops like our first Mexico cruise in Ensenada. There was only 2 things you could do. So a family with smaller kids, they were kind of limited with what they could do. There was a couple of families with smaller kids on our wine tasting tour, which was totally fine. And so they found things to do for the kids to go run around at the winery and stuff like that. But I think that's probably, that's starting to come back. There was way more options this time when we went through Ensenada. You know, some limits that way. Maybe it was a little bit less.
Leave it to me to think of an area that neither of you have thought of, because it matters to me and it doesn't matter to you.
Theater?
Less entertainment. There is less entertainment currently.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. They are doing 100%. Repeated shows. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you what it caused Seth and I to do. It caused Seth and I to have 2 nights on our cruise where we didn't go see a show. And therefore, we could go do weird stuff that other people normally do and we never do. Like listen to a piano person singing and playing the piano in the lounge, or going to night trivia. I've never done night trivia on a Disney cruise. So there was stuff like that we did that we wouldn't normally do, and it was still fun. So I don't know, but do I wish that it had more than just like one show repeating for 2 nights? Of course, they should. But like, The Wish is a great example. The number of shows that they have already advertised are going to be on The Wish means that they have to do different shows every night. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just saying that I think we're moving away from, you know, the idea that these things are going to be limited. And also, what's it called? Disney Cruise Line blog just recently put out casting notices for Disney cruise shows. So they're bringing stuff back. The Golden Mickeys will be back. They still sell those Golden Mickey statues. So I'm just like,
they just had it on our They just had it on our cruise. The Golden Mickey's was back on our cruise. So
okay, see? And it wasn't on mine. And we both sailed on the Wish to Mexico, right? You did the exact same cruise we did, right?
Yeah, the 5-day. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we did a 4-night, but the you still went all the way down to Cabo. So like when you really think about it, these products are just getting more and more and more normal. And it sounds like all of us are in agreement that even when there was slightly less in these areas, it still felt premium. It still felt worth it. And in some ways, there were perks that are about to be taken away. That atrium show, I loved that thing. It was such a cool way. And it's gone. So like, also though, I need to figure out how to look like a 7-year-old to get that wand when I go on the Wish, because I need a wand. I demand it.
I hear you. We are definitely beating my child up so we can grab his wand.
Yeah. So all of that to say,
we're not people. We're not.
All of that to say, I think, I don't know. There's just not, the only thing that I feel a little weird about is people who badmouth every other cruise line as being nowhere near as good as Disney. And I'm like, there are some cruise lines out there that have such good products. And then there are cruise lines that don't. Or that is a mixed bag where some of their ships are really sparkly and new and great. And then, like Steve and I have very different experiences on NCL, because I went on NCL's, Jewel of the Seven Seas or whatever. But Steve had been on a breakaway class ship, and I've never been on a bigger NCL ship. So I can't compare those experiences because I've only been on an NCL ship that was already 20 years old when I stepped on board. So I do think Disney ships are better maintained. Disney ships are nicer, but is the product that much better than every other cruise line? No, it's really about what you're looking for. And if you're looking for Disney IP and you're looking for the Disney experience, then you're going to get that, and you're not going to get that on the other cruise lines.
Well, we're going to probably have to wrap it up with that. The other thing that I don't think any of us really touched on, but I think that we all had those experiences, because I know we've all had those experiences with the cast members themselves, and that has never changed. I mean, they have been so gracious. They've been so accommodating, and I could just go on and on about the different different experiences that we've had with them. And I think that is one level of service which has never changed since the ship started sailing again. And so definitely want to give a nod to those guys as well. So before we get out of here, because I know that it is about to start, the red carpet is rolled out. The stars are walking up there as we speak, and Chris has got to run.
I got to run. It's my Super Bowl.
I did want to say one thing, because it made me think about this. We are going to do a show about the Wish when Christy gets on it, gets off of it, and we will probably talk about it, an overview, but at the end, we will do a spoiler-filled one for those of you who want to know what that show is at the end that they're talking about as the night before you get off the ship. But if you don't want to know about those things, we won't touch on it until the end. So just a heads up on that, because I'm going to be excited to bring that show to you guys. And I think Chris and I are excited to hear and see everything you get to experience on the Wish. So as we get out of here, Chris, I'll give you the first shot in case you need to run. Any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
Nope. Stay tuned for our Disney World trip report. I think if you only come to listen because you love our DCL content, this will be a trip report you still want to listen to, because I have a ton of thoughts about comparing these two types of vacation products to one another. Yeah, my predictions for the Oscar were going to be right, and you'll see. Go look online and see if I was right. Ariana DeBose is going to win. It's going to be great.
All right, Chris, enjoy the Oscars tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time out to get this in before it starts. Hey, Christy, any final thoughts for you?
Disney Cruise Line is still such a great magical product. As things are changing, we'll change a little bit with it and just see what comes next. And I'm excited about that too.
Well said, both of you guys. Well, everybody, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. Thanks for all the support that our Patreon supporters give us each and every week. And all of you have taken the time to go out and write us a review on iTunes. That really helps us get the show known a little bit better. Thanks for all the downloads lately. They have been huge. And we've noticed so many people coming in, finding our show. So thank you for all you guys do, spreading the word to get that our show out there. And with that, I'll just say good night. All the best to everybody who's sailing with Disney Cruise Line soon, heading to Walt Disney World, heading on an Adventures by Disney, or running with me this coming weekend on the holiday. What is it? The holiday surprise? I can't even remember. Springtime surprise. Hope to see you guys down there. But thanks for coming back and taking a listen. We'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.
Bye.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.